What's up, y'all? It's Cody. I'm back, not with a Dragon League profile, but with a Tearlaments profile. I took this list to Columbus Regionals this past Sunday, got 36 out of 439, went 6-2-1 with pretty much every win being attributable to just deck building errors, or just like sheer variance of like drawing absolutely unplayable hands given the circumstances. And I'll talk about matchups just a little bit after the fact. But Tearlaments feels like one of the best decks of the format, if not the best deck of the format. It's super fun, explosive, really resilient. The floor of the deck is still very oppressive, and the ceiling is absolutely unbeatable. So just with the way meta trends are going, Tearlaments feels really strong moving forward, and a really like solid option that people have to start respecting more than they have been. So we'll get into Tearlaments here. We've got the full package, of course. Some people play just 2 Rhinoheart, but I think having a really good mill name that's also a really good normal summon is super important for the deck. And like 4 normal summons is kind of like a nice place to be, especially with how many extenders the deck natively has. So having these 4 as good normal summons is usually enough. I'm not playing Diviner at all. I just feel like that card plays too hard into Ash and Imperm, where if you normal summon Diviner and don't have any other like play starter, which means your hand is most likely just like tier spell traps or like fusion cards, you're not getting to play the game at all. Whereas you're able to play the game more, and you're less likely to get impermed or ashed on your Rhinoheart as well. So you get to start playing earlier as well. And then every other card, like, super understandable. You need the 3 fusions. Tier Cash is the best card in the deck, so on and so forth. I've got the 4 Ishizu cards. Also don't need to explain these. These cards are broken, should be banned. And then we are on quote-unquote 3 Fenrir. We've got Fenrir, Terraforming, and Wraithsoth. And honestly, depending on hand, it'll depend on hand, but a lot of the time, Terraforming is just going to add me Wraithsoth because I really value Fenrir both going first as another point of interaction for your opponent to deal with, but also as a going second option to just break boards. Like, Fenrir on its own just puts up so much pressure, and depending on how much more common Droll gets, I might cut the Wraithsoth for a second Fenrir, which kind of makes you want to not play Terraforming at that point and maybe play a third Fenrir over it. But as of now, the flexibility of Wraithsoth being able to search this or Tier Cash, and then Terraforming being able to search this or Parallel Rhino, is really valuable. So I like the flexibility given there. Foolish, obviously. Just, it's a tier deck, it's a graveyard deck. You need cards in your graveyard. And 3 Parallel Rhino, we are on Grief and Heartbeats, and then 3 Scream. If you're not playing 3 Scream, you're crazy. This card is so valuable. Just the extra mill 3 on top of whatever else you're able to do, as well as the ability to chain block and then put pressure on your opponent's turn as well, is unmatched. Like, this is the best tier card outside of like Tier Cash exactly. And then Heartbeats, we're playing a lot of trap cards in the main deck, so we want to be able to get those back if we do mill them early. Same thing with Grief, but Grief is also a really good starter option so long as you have one other tier card in your hand already. Because then you can just send Rhinoheart, reborn the Rhinoheart, pitch the tier card, and then chain block your Rhinoheart and get some other value off of it as well. So that's all very nice. And the trap cards, we've got the 2 Sullick. This could go to 3, but for right now, 2 is really nice. I just like the synergy with Grief and with our extra deck, which we'll talk about a little bit later, of having just extra Sullicks is usually really nice thing to have in rotation. And we've got Meta Noise and Crime. I main decked Crime because I was fearing DD Crow and Bestial Hate at the regional. That didn't really happen, but I think after Dortmund and everybody's seeing that tier actually has legs in this format, people are going to be siding those kinds of cards at the very least, if not maining them more often. So Crime is a way of getting those resources back because we do only have those 3 fusion names. So it hurts a lot more to have one of them get banished. Then 1 Trevi Karma, probably the worst card in the deck, but it gets you all the best cards in the deck, so it's hard to not play this card. We're still playing King of the Swamp, unlike a lot of people seem to be doing. This card's really, really nice. I think the fusions that it facilitates are super powerful and really essential to end boards and make more resilient boards overall. Then we've got our Shaddoll package. These are all pretty normal. Maybe you don't play Schism, maybe you don't play Fusion, but if you are on Shaddoll stuff and King of the Swamp stuff, you're playing these two cards at least somewhere in the board. And these two are self-explanatory, but Hedgehog's value comes from being able to add a monster to your hand. So I was really emphasizing how good the Tear Trap cards are, and Crime is the biggest benefactor of having another monster in your hand. That also does like fuel Sheeran fuel. It gives your Grapha a little bit more oomph and things like that. I've just found that having cards in hand is really important for this deck now, and if you don't have at least a monster in hand, a lot of your top decks get a lot worse going like turn 3, turn 4, or even into grindier games. And then just the extra chain blocks are usually really nice as well. So, and then I guess the last thing is if you Shaddoll Fusion and send an Ishizu card plus Hedgehog, you then make your Shekinaga into Gamma, basically. So that is a very strong option as well. And you can even add like additional interruption for that Shekinaga after the fact too. Like in our sideboard, we're playing 2 more Shaddoll cards as interruption tools. But that leaves us with 3 main deck slots, which I'm currently using for Bestials. But I think I'm going to go back to DD Crow just to not play into Talents or Thrust as much, because the matchups where these are going to be good in are the same decks that are playing Thrust and Talents very often. Like we're talking about Unchained, Dragons. Tyr could probably find a way to play Talents as well. Like these could honestly just be like Talents Thrust slots instead. But the main thought is, you know, the best decks in the room all kind of lose to Bestials, or at least like don't appreciate their stuff being Bestialed. But that is the main deck at 42 cards. I'd love to be able to find ways to cut 2 cards out of the deck, but I don't really see it. It would be either like cutting into the Fenrir package, cutting into the Bestial, or the, you know, just the non-engine in general, or like cutting Heartbeats or Crime or something like that, but I don't think that's correct either. So I'll just deal with 42. It's felt very consistent. I only bricked, I think, 1 time in the entire Columbus Regional of 9 rounds, so I think that's testament to how good the deck is. Going into the extra deck, we've got our usual suspects. You're always going to be playing these 4 fusions at the very least. These kind of form utility of being able to put back cards that you want back in the deck. And this is just like a crazy, crazy custom card boss monster. Don't really need to explain Kaleido Heart to y'all. We've got our King of the Swamp package. All these cards are phenomenal when they hit the board. Like Guardian Chimera going second is just absurd. Grapha and Roll Kalos really let you protect Winda a lot better. And yeah, I've really liked those cards. I'm surprised people are thinking King of the Swamp isn't worth playing, just because those cards feel so strong. But another card that King of the Swamp's facilitating that feels really, really strong is Grand Gignol. Because Grand Gignol sending Apcalone just gives you so much utility. You're able to get to Schism or to Shaddoll Fusion, depending on if you're going first or second. If you have a card in hand that you don't want in your hand, like Trivic Karma, you can just use Apcalone to pitch that out of your hand and then put a Shaddoll in your hand instead. Or if you just have another fusion in hand that you can't get to the board, you can pitch the fusion off and start doing plays from there. And then you get access to Window, which is a crazy card, and Shekinaga, which is a surprisingly good card as well. Like, these are both viable Schism and Shaddoll fusion targets. Like, usually this is your Schism summon, this is usually your fusion summon, but sometimes you do swap them around because summon Shekinaga, send Fenrir comes up a lot more often than you might think. And then you're just sitting on Shekinaga, which is really strong as well. Got 3 Xyz monsters in the sideboard. We're playing Dweller, because again, like those top decks all lose to this card really hard. Got Redoer, always going to be in the deck list as well. Then I'm playing Dugaris. This card has come up I'd say at least half of my matches, if not like 2/3, maybe 3/4 of my matches, where either I need to juice something up to swing over like a towers monster, or I need to deep draw because I got hand trapped at a awkward spot, like with a Sheeran. Maybe my Sheeran got ashed or my Guido got ashed, what have you. Or I just have another card in hand that I don't want in my hand, or I just want a deep draw for more trap cards, more spell cards, things like that. Dugaris has really helped you like fix situations that otherwise you'd kind of be lost in. And Crush Heap, which is actually Sprite Elf, but it summons Rhinoheart instead, which is absurd. This card is really, really good, and I think it's one of the strongest parts of the tier end board, which is really innocuous given, like, it's not a fusion, it's not a tier card at all, but Crush Heap's really, really good. Sideboard is really still in works. This card I want to talk about first. I should have been playing this at Columbus. Like, retrospectively, it is obviously the best time card for this build. I was on Scattershot instead, and you have to mill the Scattershot naturally. You can't like make sprint and send it. And my round 5 went into time. I was able to make Dugaris, which would have been Cowboy instead, and I would have won the game. But we didn't find the Scattershot after Dugaris, and we lost. So that was a wake-up call for me, but we've resolved the issue henceforth. 3 Super Poly. This is the card I'm going to keep in the side deck for sure. This card's felt really strong overall, and especially with Vanadium kind of being hyped up post Agov, I think Super Poly is just going to rip apart their boards. Like every deck list, every deck profile I've seen, every like gameplay loop I've seen just loses to Super Poly. So I think that is the way to go. Also be playing Called By in the future. Ash is kind of a problem for some hands of the deck. Shifter's obviously a huge problem, so you want at least a possible option for it. Speaking of Shifter, this is Flu Hate. This also doubles as Dragon Hate. It doubles as Infernoble Hate, Rickus and Avalon Hate. Any like tribal deck really doesn't appreciate Zombie World being on the field, and Tier doesn't really care as much because the only fusions that really want specific types are not Roll Kalos even. It's exactly Kaleido Heart, and that might be it. Just a quick check. Yeah, everything else is named material and types, so I guess it turns off Mud Dragon as well, but yeah, so you lose out on Kaleido and Mud Dragon, but you shut down an entire deck. Pretty good deal in my book. We've got the 2 Shaddoll Fusion in the side for going second, as well as Dragon to pop back row, and Aerial to start ripping apart graveyards, because a big win con that I didn't realize at the regional, but realized after the fact against like Towers decks like Pearly, is you can mill them. You can just mill them out completely because they're adding 10, 15 cards during the course of their turn. You're going into grindier games. And if you take the cats out of the extra deck, or out of the graveyard, you're taking away their follow-up, basically. Same thing with Unchained, same thing with Dragons, same thing with Tier. This card's going to come up a lot. So I wanted it in there. And then the last 3 slots are the ones I'm most questioning. These were a Book of Eclipse at the regional. I never cited Book of Eclipse in, but I went with Droplet for the moment just because this is a very strong card as well. We'll see what time tells with this card, what this slot is going to end up being, but that is the whole deck for you. Thanks for watching. Peace out.